Hi, I'm Davis Bickford from the GitLab Runner team, and today I'm going to be talking about our beta release of the prod module in Grit. If you're not familiar with Grit, we have a great video on what is Grit by Joe Burnett that you should give a look-see, and I'll provide a link in the description. But the basic idea of Grit is that it's a library of Terraform templates that serve as a single entry point for deploying runners. And in the case of beta prod, what we're releasing is the beta version of a prod module, which establishes a template for deploying runner managers in AWS, directing jobs to auto-scaling groups that are controlled by our auto-scaling and fleeting mechanisms using images we've built for ephemeral runners. So I kind of threw a lot at you there. So I'm going to explain exactly what that is with an example. So prod, when I said prod module, to be specific, we have three different modules. There's prod, test, and dev. You can see here, there's this prod module as an example, it has a lot of variables that you need to set. You need to say exactly what you want in your infrastructure. When you look at an example of a test module, like this one, you can see there's a lot fewer variables that we need to provide in order to build our infrastructure. And then if you look at the dev module here, there's even fewer still. So the idea is that with prod, you're building an entire GitLab runner infrastructure, everything from your runner manager to a fleet of auto-scaling runners that has everything you need, even up to registering a GitLab runner token for you. And when you run a test fleet, it'll do a lot of those same things, but you don't need to give it as much information. This is not something that's intended for production release. This is something for testing and playing around with things. And then dev, the further subset down, is when maybe you just want a piece of the equation. Maybe you just want to build a fleet of Mac ephemeral runners, and you have your own runner manager already that's going to be pointed to them. So in this example, I'll show you the kind of cool stuff we can do with a prod module. So let's take a look. I'm gonna move this here so I can show you both at the same time. This right here is the variables file that's inside of AWS prod. And so these are all the variables that you may need to supply in order to build your infrastructure. And you can see the ones that you don't need to give have default set. So you're going to need to give a manager service, for example, EC2. You're going to need to give a fleeting service, also by example, EC2. In these two right here, what operating system do you want to run the jobs on? In this case, I've put Linux. And then which image are we using on these machines as we run the job? The executor you need to run, the instance type, the specific type of instance and size that AWS offers that you may want to be running this on. Grit is also going to build the networking for you. And so in this case, as of now, we have the CIDR as one of the variables that you provide. And this will probably get more granular in the future. Moving on, we have the capacity per instance, and then the scale min and max of how many machines you want to be able to scale up to and down to. And then these are things that become optional. So if we look at the GitLab project ID, you can see that you don't need to provide that because maybe you're not pointing at a project. Maybe you're trying to build an instance runner. Maybe you don't feel like giving a description. Runner tags, maybe you want anything to run on it, you don't want to give the tags. But in this particular case, just to demonstrate what you can do, I've added these in. And then we get to a couple very important pieces that are required in the production specifically module. In this case, min maturity. This is where you say, what is the minimum maturity that you expect when deploying these runners and all these machines in order to guarantee stability? If you're willing to accept an alpha release level of stability, then you would say alpha. If you want beta, you'd say beta. If you want it to be stable, be backward, forward compatible. Then you put stable. And we have a check inside of our grit code that does an evaluation based on which min maturity that you provide in order to let you know if the particular configuration that you are asking for is not currently available in that maturity level. So for example, with EC2, and Docker Autoscaler, as I've specified here, we have those currently defined as a release of alpha. So we're only guaranteeing an alpha level stability for this. If you were to give anything else at this particular time, besides EC2, Docker Autoscaler, you would get an error telling you that it's completely unsupported, that this is not something that we have any guarantees for at this time. So the final variable here is name, and this is something that will act as a prefix in most of the names and tags, anywhere that it's applicable and usable inside of currently AWS instances and components. So this will be a way that, as a human readable format, you can go in, you can differentiate. If you have multiple infrastructures running at the same time, you can see which infrastructure belongs, for example, to the release demo, or which belongs to a different department, whatever is essential to your needs. So I've already spun this up so that everything could get warmed up. But to give you an idea of how this works, you would run Terraform in it. You would make sure that you have your provider, your AWS provider configured. If you are in fact providing or not providing rather a GitLab runner token that you've already registered yourself and you want Grit to register one for you, you'll also need to set up your GitLab provider so that everything's ready for Terraform to consume. And after I've run Terraform init, I'll go to Terraform plan. And you can see here the example I was giving about min maturity. Because I've set it to stable and we are only guaranteeing alpha at this time, we've got a warning. This check block assertion has told us that maturity is alpha, but min maturity is stable. In other words, we can't deploy this for you at the maturity level you're requesting. So if I put this back down to alpha and run Terraform plan again, we'll see there's no changes in this case because I've already deployed this, but also no errors, letting us know that this is safe to do, that we can get what we're asking for. And so if I go over and show you what is deployed here, in fact, actually, I've made some changes. Let me back up a little bit here. I do have this GitLab CI YAML configured to run a really simple job using the tag Linux EC2 job, which is the same one that I set inside my configuration for the module. And targeting this particular tag, I'm just going to run an echo hello Linux EC2 runner. I'm going to run it in parallel 25. So we know that I'm going to be hitting the system in a way that we want to see the auto scaling actually activate and start generating more instances up to our maximum instances, perhaps. So if I go and look, let's see. Well, first I need to push this up, push up my branch. Let's take a look at this. Since this is just a demo, I'm not going to fill this in, but we'll take a look. All right, we can see the pipeline is already running. I'll go and check the pipeline status. All right, we can see 2 have already started. That was the number of the minimum scale that I had set. And we can see all the rest are awaiting their start here. And if I skip over to AWS, we can see I have my release demo prefix name on the fleeting autoscaling group. And if I go to instances, I can see of all the ones running, we now have a runner manager and 4 instances running. You can see 2 are initializing, while two have already been running for some time as the idle min scale capacity. And these initializing ones are actually the jobs scaling up as we would expect because we have a maximum of 10 that we may need more machines to complete the job. In this case, it looks like we're already railing through it. It's a really fast job. It just echoes something. So a lot of these are already getting completed. But let's see. I think if we were to put a sleep in here or have a more intensive, longer lasting job, we'd see this start to scale up even more so as it is needed. Oh, yep, there it is. So we're scaling up. We're recognizing that we don't have enough machines to run all these jobs at once. So it is scaling up. Now, if I come back here, I bet these are all just about done. Do a refresh just to get the, yeah, just one straggler there. Just about done with the entire pipeline, all 25 jobs running what had started as 2 instances, shot up to about 6, it looked like, and now we're already scaling back down based on the configuration that we've given that we no longer need those instances, so shutting them down. So we've got the maturity level, went over that. We've got the scope variable, apply. I think this pretty much covers all of the pieces of how you use Grit and deploy a production ready environment of GitLab runner manager plus GitLab runners that will be consumed by that manager. And just as a final example to show you this final step that would be taken, normally you would go to Terraform apply in order to apply this job or this module, I'm sorry. And you can see in this case, because I've already deployed this, there's nothing to add, change, or destroy. But yeah, I think that's everything we've got for the beta prod release of Grit. Thank you for your time.